Hi, Lauren. Thank you. On June 25th, 1996, 19 American airmen were killed while they slept at the Khobar Towers complex in Saudi Arabia. The terrorist bombing injured more than 500 others. But even after 2 years of investigations, no concrete leads have been established. Now, last year, a Saudi dissident was believed to have been involved in the blast, but the case against him fell apart when he reneged on a plea bargain agreement and insisted he had no information on the bombing. Hani Abdel al-Sayir is now awaiting deportation to Saudi Arabia. To give us more details on what was once the FBI's best hope for answers in this case is the man who represented Mr. al-Sayir, immigration attorney Michael Wiles. Also back with us from Palm Coast, Florida, Fran Heiser. Her son Michael was killed in the explosion in Dhahran. And from Minneapolis, Herman Marthaler, whose son Brent also died in the explosion. And joining us from Washington, senior diplomatic correspondent with the Associated Press, Barry Schweid. Michael, Hani al-Sayir was your client. Let's make that clear. He is not anymore. Tell us what it is that attracted the U.S. attention to him in the first place.
There were reports that a gentleman had entered Canada that had been involved in this atrocity. And the Canadian Intelligence Service at that time were going to deport Hani al-Sayir to Saudi Arabia. He then reached out to American law enforcement, to the FBI, and sought a deal where he would turn over information on this terrible incident in exchange for political asylum. And then, in turn, both parties had reached out to me to see if I could broker the arrangement. And I was successful in doing that. We were able to bring him into the United States and work out a plea agreement which still remains under seal. So I'm not really still permitted, even though he is no longer my client, to talk about that deal.
So there was a plea agreement, but he reneged on it. You can say that.
Yes.
Now, the United States, this investigation is going nowhere. Do you think that your former client may have some of the answers that would propel this thing forward?
There is a very close fellowship between the United States and Saudi Arabia. This gentleman had told me before he came here that he had information about the players and the people that were involved in this atrocity. And then when he came to the United States, after we negotiated a deal, they ended up rescinding the deal. And they replaced me with another court-appointed attorney, and the whole deal was up. So, to be honest, whether or not I believe he had anything to do with this is not the issue. He has already said that he has no information on this and now is awaiting deportation back to Saudi Arabia.
What do you think happened in this bombing?
Well, first I should say that my allegiance was first to a person who was going to be put in jeopardy by returning to a country that would not give him a fair day in court. And yet I'm an American citizen that feels that this was an outrageous event where we had our boys sleeping in the middle of the night to protect a country that is now not cooperating, from the things that I'm reading, with intelligence and law enforcement in the United States. I think that Mr. al-Sayir was a person that would have had information and should have been imparted some more deference. And at this juncture, I still believe that he is trying to make his case in federal court and before an immigration process. And I wish our law enforcement officials Godspeed, as well as our legislators and our president, that they approach this with the same zeal that those boys went when they went to Saudi Arabia.
Very good point. Unfortunately, we need to take a short break right now, but we're coming right back with more of our discussion on the U.S.-Saudi inquiry into the 1996 bombing of the Khobar Towers. Has it stalled? Will it be solved? We'll talk about that when we come back.
15. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back. Thursday will mark the second anniversary of the Khobar Towers explosion in Saudi Arabia. The terrorist attack killed 19 American airmen. We asked the FBI, the Justice Department, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and Saudi Arabia's embassy for details on where the investigation stands today. All of them refused comment. Will the families of the victims ever find peace? Back with us from Palm Coast, Florida, Fran Heiser. Her son Michael died in the explosion. From Minneapolis, Herman Marthaler, whose son Brent also was killed. With us from Washington, senior diplomatic correspondent with the Associated Press, Barry Schweid. And here in our studio, immigration attorney Michael Wilds. Ms. Heiser, do you think that your son died defending America or defending Saudi Arabia?
A little bit of both. At this point, I hope that I'm not correct in thinking that maybe oil's a little more important than human life. That's the way it's being treated.
Mr. Marthaler, what about that? I mean, your son and 18 others died in Saudi Arabia, and yet it seems that the U.S. government is getting very little cooperation from the Saudi government. You think we should be more forceful?
Well, it's a difficult question for a parent to ask. I miss Brent. With our global economy, I don't think many citizens of the United States understand exactly what's going on. And I trust the United States, and I believe that if they decide to use our military to make it so maybe a country like China can buy oil in Saudi Arabia so that we can deal with China, maybe I'm not supposed to understand everything that goes on. As long as a guy goes in the military and he fights for freedom, I think our freedom is what this is all about.
Michael, you got this case in part because you've had experience in dealing with the Saudi government, the case of Pat Rausch, who was, whose daughters were taken from America back to Saudi Arabia. Dealing with the Saudi government, it's just not going to happen?
It's not easy. Many have felt that we have bartered our daughters. Pat Rausch's 2 girls were taken when they were 7 and 4 years old. She hasn't seen them in 12 years. Unless I applied a lot of pressure to the government, she would not have ever been able to return and visit them. The fact remains, many people believe that we have bartered our sons and daughters for oil and for strategic military installations. And I would hope that our leaders would revisit the relationship before more people suffer.
On that note, we have to wrap this up. I want to thank Fran Heiser and Herman Marthaler. Thanks very much for joining us today. Michael Wilds and Barry Schweid, thanks for being with us. Coming up next on Fox News, we will have the latest on the Ennis Cosby trial. Lauren Green has details. Lauren?